Hello, my name is Rand, and today we're going to do 5 tips on how to create monsters. These tips come from my book, 185 Tips on World Building, and you can get a copy of this in ebook form for free or 99 cents depending on the week by looking in the video description and finding the appropriate link. I also have other resources down there, and some of those are also free, so check it out. Tip number 1. Decide if you really need monsters. Sometimes we need our characters to just kill things while they're out and about in the wild, and we can sometimes use animals for this, or we can use other species. For example, in fantasy, we might have ogres or orcs, goblins, that kind of thing, and we can use those instead of creating a monster. If you're wondering what the difference between a monster and something else is, we'll talk about that in another tip in a minute. One reason to invent a monster is to have them be a cautionary tale or represent something morally objectionable. This is the way they were typically used on Earth when we invented them. And here they're not real, so we did invent them, and they were usually for representing something morally objectionable to the society that had invented it. On the world that we're inventing, the monster might actually be real, and therefore maybe it doesn't represent anything. But if we wanted to, we can, and this is how we get a little further into doing literature, where there's a little more depth to the monster that we've created. It's not just there to be something scary or to be killed. It actually says something about the story that we're telling and the characters and the society that is interacting with it. Tip number 2 is to decide what the monster can do. These behaviors are often the reason it's terrifying, even if it's on accident. It also might just be frightening, but we really want to know what this monster can do, partly because we are probably going to have our characters get into a fight of some kind with it. One thing I like to do to get started is just to imagine fight scenes between this and either my characters or maybe the local villagers, and just start to imagine things that could be cool about this or different and unique, so that my monster stands out from all the others that people have seen before. If you find these videos helpful, I would love some support on Patreon so that I can continue making them for you. Please look in the video description for the link and check out all the goodies I have for supporters. And if you already contribute, you are awesome and thank you very much. Tip number 3 is to understand the difference between a monster and either animals or species. In the case of species, those are always going to have much more civilization and sophistication and culture than a monster, which is going to have none of that, partly because there's typically only one monster. And that's one of the differences between a monster and animals. Animals, like a cat, there are going to be many cats, but a monster, there's just going to be the one of them. And one of the reasons this is an issue is that people don't understand this monster precisely because there's only one. It's not like you can go get experience with a bunch of others of its kind, and then you can figure out what to do with this one because you have experience with others. No, there's only this one. Monsters are typically a little bit smarter than animals anyway, although sometimes they are not. But the point is that if they are as smart as species and there's more than one of them, well, they're going to start having offspring, and then that's going to continue, and there are going to be more and more of them, and then they're going to start developing culture and all that, and they're not going to be a monster anymore. They're going to be a species. Another reason for there to be only one monster is that, unfortunately, our own species tends to think of anything as different as being something that is not good. So if there's only one of them, well, by definition, it's different from everybody else, therefore it must be bad. This is not a great tendency of ours, but it's something that we do. Tip number 4. Decide on the origins of your monster, even if you never talk about it in your story. The reason this matters is that this can help us determine a lot of the things about them. For example, their attitude about humans, in this case, could be caused by their origins. Maybe there was an accident that humans caused and that led to this monster's existence. In that case, the monster was most likely already a human or, for example, another species. I'm just using humans as an example because it could be anyone, but this can lead to attitudes that this monster has. Maybe this monster actually is trying to kill humans because it has a chip on its shoulder about what was done to it. In science fiction, we can use technology as the point of origin, and in fantasy, we can use magic. Or in both, we could use anything like supernatural phenomenon or radiation, whether we call it that or not, and whether we use a known one like gamma rays or something that we have invented. The monster could have run into a phenomenon on accident or on purpose if someone wanted to do something to this person, and they may not have been trying to create a monster, they may have just been trying to kill the character, but it had this side effect instead. Either one of these scenarios can give our monster an attitude of one kind or another about either the person who was responsible for that or the whole species who did it, or just all species everywhere. So we can use this to characterize what the character wants, or excuse me, what the monster wants. And that leads us right into tip number 5. Decide what the monster wants, because even they want something. Maybe it wants revenge like we were just talking about. Maybe it just wants food and it happens to be killing the local cow population of the village that they're depending on. And so they, or somebody sees it and they get freaked out and now it's got a problem. It might want to just be left alone. Everyone wants security. Why wouldn't a monster want it too? One of the things that we often see either discussed or implied is that monsters are hoarding treasure. This doesn't really make a lot of sense unless the monster's not too bright and just thinks that the treasure is shiny and therefore attractive. And the reason I say this is if that monster has a gold coin, what's it going to do with it? It's not like it's going to waltz into town and buy a nice dinner for, itself and its honey. It's not part of society. It can't use that as bartering like we would. So even if it understands that coin has value in society, it cannot partake of the way of trading that everyone else can. So one reason that the treasure would still be around is that people carried it in there when they got killed by the monster, and the monster just left it. Or the monster is smart enough to realize that even though it can't use that treasure, other people covet it, and maybe it does want to kill people, and so it leaves that treasure sitting, maybe there's a trail of it at the opening of the cave, and better stuff is deeper in the cave, and so it lures people in with it. So that would be a more sensible use of a treasure. But as far as it just wanting treasure for no reason, that's only going to be if it thinks it's really shiny and pretty, I think. These tips are based on a chapter from Creating Life, and here is a summary of that chapter's contents. Summary of Chapter 5, Creating Monsters. The difference between monsters, species, and animals is largely sophistication and numbers. Many monsters are created by accidents that transform an existing species or animal, but sometimes monsters are created on purpose. In the latter case, it's especially important to decide who caused this and why. A monster's habitat has an impact on its usefulness and sets the stage for creating an atmosphere and characterization that will largely define our audience's experience with it before the terrifying reveal. Its motivation in life or in our work also determines what it does and the sort of trouble it's causing for our species. Okay, that's all for the 5 tips on how to create monsters. Those come from 185 Tips on World Building, but that book is based on my series, The Art of World Building, and the chapter on monsters is in the Volume 1, Creating Life. So there's information in the video description about that. Feel free to check it out, and please like the video and subscribe, and I look forward to talking to you next time. By the way, if you'd like more stuff to help with world building, my artofworldbuilding.com site has a bunch of free templates that you can download by joining the mailing list. You can click the link in the episode description or the little information button in the upper right-hand corner. There are over 20 of these templates, as you can see from this list. Most of them are Microsoft Word documents, but the 2 calculator ones, which come from my Creating Places book, are Excel spreadsheets that take care of the math for you. You can just type in measurements from a map and find out how long it takes to go somewhere by dragon, wagon, foot, or even ships. If you're enjoying the video, remember to click the like button and subscribe.